Hello, everybody. Before we get started, I'd like you to all stand up. Don't get too lazy here today. This is going to be an interactive session, so it's not about finally calming your mind and relaxing. We're going to be busy here. Please put your arms straight up in the air. Straight up in the air. Oh, you're quick. Oh, well, you're always looking what your leaders are doing, right? Please sit down. You can sit down again. That was really funny. I've never seen a group pick this up so quickly, and I think the reason is sitting here. What we just experienced was that when you give people an ambiguous message, they will always follow what you do and not what you tell them. Okay? I mean, this is, your grandmother could tell you this, right? It's nothing new. Psychologists have known this for a very long time, but today we know the neuronal mechanism behind that. Neuroscience can show us why people behave this way. And actually, it's something called the mirror neuron system. About 10 years ago, there was a little lab in Italy, in Parma, with a professor called Giacomo Rizzolatti. He studied motor activity in the brain. So he looks, if you want to grasp an object, let's say I want to take this pen, I do it with these grasping movies that only monkeys and humans can do. And he studied what happens in your brain if I decide to take this object with this specific grasping movement. That can be very boring for you leaders. You know, monkeys sitting in a laboratory picking up raisins and nuts. How can this matter to leaders? And what happened is that, well, you have to imagine there's a monkey sitting in a chair. He's wired electronically, so you can pick up single neurons, and it will be wired in a way that only neuronal activity is heard when he does this, but not when he does this. Okay? So there's specific neurons that respond when you do a grasping movement. And what he did is, the monkey was sitting there. The monkey had a break, so the monkey was not eating raisins. Every time the monkey was eating a raisin, you could hear sound. Let's see if I can do it with this microphone. No, well, it would be like pang, 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 every time this neuron responds. The monkey was taking a break. He was not eating anything, and a student came into the room, and he was hungry. So he went to the bowl of food for the monkey, and he took some food, which is what happens when you work a lot with monkeys. You share your food. It doesn't become so strange to you anymore. And the monkey was sitting there, not doing anything, but you heard neuronal activity from the amplifier. So the monkey brain suddenly responded to the grasping movement because the student also had taken a raisin. And this is how mirror neurons were discovered. Mirror neurons are neurons that are active both when you perform a certain task or when you watch somebody else do the very same thing. It's the basis for empathy. Okay? We do have a built-in system in our brain that constantly checks out what other people are doing. That really changes the way we look at human behavior. Psychologists used to have a lot of theories saying, you know, it's all about education. Your parents have to tell you how to be nice to other people. As I said, don't hit that other child. It's not nice. That's not how we learn it. When we see somebody being hit, we also feel the pain. Okay? And what I thought was so funny here today, usually it takes people a long time. I can stand there for 5 minutes and they won't put their arms up. I don't think it's because you're so much smarter here, even though you probably are very smart, but the other people I work with are also very smart. So it's because your leaders picked it up easily and quickly. And people always are more attuned to the leaders. It just shows me that you were maybe not so much looking at me, but it was more important to you what your leaders were doing, which is smart. You only get to see me for an hour, but they will stay, right? So research shows that mirror neurons respond more strongly to people we like, to people that we look up to, and to people we perceive to similar as ourselves. So if you want to have a good collaboration with the people around you, you should be aware of the fact that people will always look at you, and if you have good relationships, they will pick up from you more easily. But I'm not going to talk too much about mirror neurons today. This was just to show you We are very social creatures. We're constantly checking what other people are doing. And I would like to show you today two things. I will give you a little insight into how the brain works. Not because, well, it is interesting, but not per se. But in order to then show you how to create a high-performing team or how to set up an environment in which performance is possible. Performance and collaboration. Okay, are you with me? Okay. I have a flip chart here. I will turn some of you my back, which is unusual for me. I will try to move around in a way so that all of you will get to see me at some point, so we can interact. Oh, and by the way, I'm very happy to be interrupted, challenged, asked questions. If you ever feel you're being bored, it's too slow, it's too quick, or you have an urgent question that you just have to ask, I'm happy to address that. Otherwise, we will have questions afterwards. And Pascal, I think he has a microphone, so if somebody has something really interesting to ask, we can even go there and have it heard by everyone. Before we learn more about the brain, I'd like to start with a little quiz. I said we're not going to sit here to relax. Does anybody here know the Maslow pyramid of needs? Are you familiar with that concept? Now, let's see how well you know it. There are 5 levels. What's at the bottom? Just shout it out. I will try to hear you. Food, drink. Okay. So you need food and drink, and what we usually call this is physiological need. Okay? You can say here, physiological needs. Well, what Maslow said is that first of all, we want to survive, right? We need food, we need to drink, we need to sleep. These are very basic needs. What's next? Security. I heard, that's good you're sitting here, I can hear that. So, security, safety. You know, it's not so much fun to be attacked by the tiger. Before you care about anything else, it's good to feel secure and safe, that you're not attacked, that you feel. What's next? I don't need all 5 levels. If you give me one more, that's more than enough. Sorry? Very good. He said, belong to some group, be part of a group. We can summarize that as social needs. Okay? So, I give you the last one. I think you all know it, or somebody can scream it very loud, so, you know. Sorry? Purpose. Yes? So self-actualization, we can call it purpose. So the idea is, first you want to survive and get, you know, so you don't die. Then you make sure you're not attacked by anybody dangerous. Then you start caring about family and friends and having children and building bonds. And once you have all of that, that's when you care about self-actualization and think, I might want to work at TK and let's think about how to make a better elevator or something like that. Only once these needs are fulfilled. There's missing one. I know. Do you want to give it? No, I don't know. I can give it. I will tell you. I told you there's 5. Here we can put it's. We can call it attention, saying people seek other people's attention and appreciation. Okay, so before you care about yourself and your self-actualization, before that you want to get some credit from others. The attention of my boss. Attention of your boss, for example. Yeah. Does that seem plausible to you? I see many people know it. You make sure all the 5 factors are there. That's good. Here we go. It's wrong. Okay, I wish I had a bigger pen. I would make it even. I could eat the paper on stage or something. But what I want to say is, it's wrong. Why is it wrong? I just told you about the mirror neurons. I told you we have a built-in device in our brain that constantly mirrors what other people are doing. Social needs are here at the bottom. We are not lonely wolves that live in the forest and, we go and pick our berries and we live by ourselves. When a baby is born, it can't feed itself. It can't escape from the tiger. It has to look cute, so the mother takes care of it. Okay? We are very social creatures, so nobody survives on its own. Actually, we used to live in groups of maybe 50 people, and if you were excluded from that group, that meant you were more or less dead. Nobody survives on its own. So basic needs are having good relationships. Today, maybe it's possible. I heard, there's some teenagers in Japan, they never leave the apartment, they do everything from their iPhone, and they order the food, and they don't have to interact with anybody anymore. Okay, I think you can survive without other people, but it's not our human nature. And research also shows that when we don't have good relationships, that's when people get sick. You live many years longer if you have good relationships. So today, I'd like to give you an alternative to Maslow that better reflects our very social brain. Okay? Let's move over here. So you also get to see something. I will show you just, not too long, but just the very brain basics that you need to understand how we all function. If this is the brain, seen from the side, not a very pretty picture, but I think you get the idea. Here are the eyes. Okay, so it's a cut in half. You see it? I see it. Huh? Well, be a little bit creative here. I won't go into more detail to that. If we're talking about high performance, I know your motto here is accelerate and execute. You're here because you're performers of the company and you want to get even better. How do you do that? There's a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. What does the prefrontal cortex do? It's the part that's located right here between our eyes. It's a part of the brain that makes us human, that distinguishes us from other animals. This is where you do your logical thinking, your planning in the future. If you have an Excel spreadsheet and you fill in the number, you use the prefrontal cortex. Also, if we, all the higher cognitive tasks where you really need to sit down and calculate something, this is something most animals don't have. This is also one very important function of this part of the brain is executive functions. These are things like, for example, you're able to control yourself, you're able to delay gratification. That's a very important feature that we have. For example, there was an experiment where they had a marshmallow and they told the children, okay, here's a marshmallow. If you wait 5 minutes, you get 2 marshmallows. And the kids who chose to wait were the ones that many years later were more successful in life and had higher income and had higher education. Because if you're able to delay gratification in order to achieve something later on, that makes you much more successful. I won't bore you with all the details of the prefrontal cortex, but just maybe one little detail that's more of a private nature. Teenagers and children don't have a fully working prefrontal cortex. So it only matures at about age 18 or 20. Everything else is there, okay? But the prefrontal cortex is a little bit slow, and it's highly individual when it's mature. For some, it's earlier, for some, it's later. So keep that in mind when you are in these situations with your toddler or teenager or whatever you might have at home. It's their prefrontal cortex that's not working well yet, okay? I always find that very useful. I have 3 children, and they're all under the age of 3. And I must say, it's good to know why they behave the way they do, right? I will move over here. Just think it's good to include all of you. Now we said the prefrontal cortex is so important for your performance. Yes, but another part is way more important, and that's the limbic system. The limbic system is the part of the brain that you need to process emotions. That's the seat of your emotions. There are two basic mechanisms of reactions in the emotional parts of our brain. One is reward. So if you experience something positive, somebody gives you a compliment, you receive a gift, somebody says, great job, or you eat some chocolate, your reward circuit in the brain will be activated and dopamine will be released. Just for those of you who are, I know many people here have a very technical background, you might be interested in the fact that it's a substance you often read about in the news, dopamine. It makes you happy. It's the same circuit that is active when somebody takes drugs. So when somebody takes drugs, you need more of the same to receive the same result. So let's say you have a feedback conversation with somebody today and you say, great job, you did so well. This person builds an expectation. You can't think, I don't have to say it anymore, right? I said it. No. Same in a marriage, you can't say once, I love you, you get married, and then you just think, that's it. We need repetition. Dopamine comes quickly, it goes quickly. It's very evaporate. Okay? We need constant positive things happening to keep us happy. We need more of the same. So if you say, I love you, then maybe next time you say, I love you, and you bring some, imagination is. You can do lots of nice things during the long course of a marriage. Otherwise, it might not be as long. So that's the reward circuit. I think you all know what I mean. We all know these feelings. We also have a system in place. It's called the threat circuit. It's the other way. Anything negative happens. Let's say you all boo at me at the end. I leave the stage crying. I would be in a threat stage, right? Or you get a call and somebody says, I'm very dissatisfied with how you're doing your job. You're fired. They will probably put you in a threat state, okay? It can be very small things. It doesn't have to be, here's the thing. I told you dopamine, it comes quickly, it goes quickly. Threat, it comes quickly and it stays forever, okay? Threat is processed by the brain, or potentially threatening stimuli is processed by the brain 9 times more strongly than reward. It's a so-called negativity bias. So it's so easy to make people unhappy, it's so difficult to make them happy. Because I know one researcher, I don't know his name right now, but he said reward circuit or positive words and positive interactions are like Teflon for the brain, and negative interactions are like Velcro, they stick. Okay, the material for children's shoes and the Velcro. So it's very difficult to get out of threat. When you're in a threat state, cortisol is released, and cortisol can stay in your blood for a very long time. That's why we used to normally, you all have heard that one before, I think, the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. When something negative happens, you can either attack, you can run away, or you can just pretend you're not there. Yeah? If you attack, cortisol will be released out of your body relatively quickly. If you run away, cortisol will also be used to make you run quicker. If you just freeze, cortisol might stay with you. Today in corporations, many people are in freeze state. They don't attack because that would be considered impolite. They don't run away because then you don't have a job anymore, the paycheck is not coming anymore, you can't be homesick forever. So you're in this freeze state and the cortisol just builds up. Let's say, negative things happen at work. It's often not the tiger from the wood that comes to attack you, but it's your colleague that annoys you or your boss that you just don't like and who constantly micromanages you. There's lots of potentially negative interaction at work if we don't interact with each other the way we should. Why is the brain so stupid to... Didn't we think the brain was like a computer and process everything neutrally and objectively? Shouldn't this be our goal, to be neutral? And, this is bad, is it? Why do we have this negativity bias? Anybody here who has an idea? Survival, I hear. Yes. Imagine your colleague discovered some kind of new, very tasty berry in the forest, and he has tried it, and it's really good, and all your friends come along, and you pick it, and you eat it, and you enjoy it. That's good, right? But imagine, I don't know, a snake comes in here from there, and you see your colleague is being eaten. Everybody will run away, right? We don't want to miss negative information. We are much more, if something positive happens, we watch and say, oh, I might like that too. But a negative interaction is even sufficient to watch somebody else make a negative experience to make us run. We are very sensitive to threat, and your ancestors were sensitive to threat, and that's why you are alive here. You meet the tiger once, you run away. You meet him twice, you don't say, oh, maybe he's nicer today. You run, okay? So that's, I will go over here. That's the threat and the reward circuit. By itself, yeah, what do you do with this information? I think it's already valuable in itself because once you know about threat and reward, you will instantly recognize when people are in threat and reward. You will see it all around you. You will notice it in yourself. You can ask yourself, am I in threat or am I in reward? Might seem very simple, but it helps a lot to understand why people behave the way they are. They might be in fight, flight, or freeze behavior, or they are in an approach state. Here's the thing. I talked about the prefrontal cortex, and we're talking today about performance. And I said this is more important for performance than this. Why? Because there's lots of connections between these two parts. Okay, so it's none of these work in isolation. When we are in a reward state, our prefrontal cortex works much better. We could go into more detail if that's always true, but in general speaking terms, you can be sure that if somebody's in a reward state, he will be having a better working prefrontal cortex. So it pays off. If you have a team that's happy and motivated to work with you, they will have a better functioning prefrontal cortex. Beware, it won't make them smarter because the prefrontal cortex that you have is the one you have. Okay, your intelligence is pretty much genetically determined. But whether, let's say a brain under reward is a little bit like a brain under a boost, under a dopamine boost. So it just works quicker, it works better, it works more efficiently. When you're in a threat state, let's cut it short, your prefrontal cortex really doesn't work that well anymore. Okay? This is what happens because when you meet the tiger in the woods, you don't want to think of 10 creative ways to find a solution. You just want to run quickly. So it's better if you're not thinking too hard. Sometimes it's good to not think too much, especially when you're a threat. So now in an organizational setting, if you want people to find own solutions, be creative, be proactive, you need them to be in a reward state rather than a threat state. Okay, are you following me? Yes, that's good. Now I will show you how you can use that to interact with other people, because it's good already to recognize in which state somebody's in. That's sometimes more than enough. But what can you do to create reward states? How can you put people in this reward state? What can you as a leader do to make people happy at work and increase performance? You want to see it? Show you? That's the alternative to Maslow. I destroyed the Maslow pyramid. I always make sure to give an alternative, otherwise it's very, I can't just complain about all the things that are wrong. I need to give you something you can take home. And this is something I find you can use right away. I'm very convinced that you can find a use for it today. You don't need to practice it. Very simple. I will go over here. To keep the camera team challenged and in the right level of activity. This is the SCARF model. David Rock invented it. It's a model to maximize reward and minimize threat. So these are 5 factors based on our social brain, on how you can put people into reward state or put them out of threat. First of them is status. No, I'm not talking about a bigger company car, a higher bonus, or a more expensive watch, even though this can have a positive impact. Anyhow, I'm talking about how do you make other people feel? When you give somebody feedback, do you look at that person and do you know this person's name and do you spend time and do you, are you fully there or are you playing with your iPhone at the same time or are you... I worked for a company where we implemented a big giving feedback. Well, anyhow, we did a lot of work on feedback. And people told us stories that you have this annual report and you want to give somebody feedback and you do this for half an hour and you read, oh, I see you've done so much better on your time management. Oh, you reached all your goals. And then half an hour later, they discovered it was the wrong person they talked to. This happens. I'm not making this up. I've heard it many times. So this does happen. Maybe not to you, obviously, but to these people, right? We all know situations where we maybe don't treat the people with the respect and the appreciation people would deserve, or would at least would want to feel. So it's not about how much you like that person. It's about how liked does this person feel. It's about perceived status. As always in the brain, the 9-to-1 negativity bias, that's highly personal. That's just an average. Some people have a, 20-to-1 negativity bias. You can make these people unhappy very quickly. And these people can be very sensitive. Maybe you have to run to a meeting and you don't say hello. They will think for weeks and weeks, why didn't he say hello? Why didn't he greet me? These things happen. So we are very sensitive to status. We all want to feel important. We all want to feel appreciated. We all want to be seen. People rather get negative feedback than no feedback at all. We all seek other people's attention. So that's one thing you can do very easily, I think. Next one is certainty. The brain is constantly trying to anticipate the future. That's what it does. That's how this limbic system is trying to, find out if I have a problem right now, I might have an even bigger problem 10 minutes from now. So we are constantly trying to understand what's happening next. That's just our way of being. People get very freaked out when they don't know what's happening next. Let's say an airplane crashes and you know somebody who's been on that airline and maybe was flying that day, and you call the airline and you say, well, did he survive? And they say, oh, well, we didn't do a DNA analysis yet. We haven't checked. We have no clue. We call you whenever we are ready. You don't want, that's not a very good way of communicating this situation. So what do the airlines do? They give you process safety. Probably 10 minutes after the crash, they won't know who survived and who died. But they will be able to give you very clear and precise analysis of the process. They will say, I will call you tomorrow morning. We now do all the checks. They give you process clarity. So as a leader, you don't always have the legal situation or you don't always have the overview of what's going to happen. But you can always try to give people process safety. And very often, people don't care so much about the change safety, but they're wondering, is my job going to be there still after we've done through all these processes? If you have people that have words like this, they can't really concentrate on work. So always think about the fact some people might be very worried about the future and what this change process means to them. Try to inform them as much as possible and as clearly as possible. The next one, there has been research on entrepreneurs. And very often people quit their jobs and become entrepreneurs because they think they will work less. They think, I will do this 4-hour work week. I will just be very successful in these 1 day or 2 days I'm working, and then I spend time with my family. I will get a holiday house in Hawaii, and that's where I will spend the winter. They have all these ideas, and then you check them 4 years later, and they work more, but they're less stressed. Okay? So it's all about autonomy. Research has shown that people who are entrepreneurs, who run their own business, or people that are very high up in the hierarchy have lower levels of cortisol, of the stress hormone in the blood, not because they have less work and less problems and less difficult situations, but because they are the ones running the show. If your boss asks you to make a presentation ready tonight until 3 a.m. because he just feels like it, you won't enjoy. You will be sitting there and hating him while you do it. If you run your own business and you're just meeting a very important client tomorrow, you just do this and it won't bother you so much. You won't come to the meeting complaining that you're so tired. You did it because you choose to. Autonomy is the #1 protector against stress. So in all your change processes, whenever you go into ownership and really own a process and decide to really do this, you will feel much better about it than when you feel like you're the victim. You're the passive. Oh, a question. Can somebody come with a microphone? This looks like he has a long question. No, okay.
Why short and I can be loud?
Okay, that's good.
Is it possible that autonomy is the reason because they become entrepreneurs or they go up on the scale?
Yes, so I will repeat that question just to make sure. He asked whether it's the other way around. I said they want more autonomy, that's why they become... Yes, they... very often, people who are entrepreneurs have a more active dopamine system. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter not only for the reward system, but also for being active, for being curious, for being risk-taking, for being excited about things. Obviously, there's a bias there. Not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody would be enjoying it. So you're right. But these entrepreneur people, they're definitely more happy in the entrepreneur job. But that's not the only... Did I answer your question correctly? Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, it's not a standard... standard distribution who becomes an entrepreneur or not. There are physiological factors behind. There's a neurochemistry. You can see that entrepreneurs have a different neurochemical profile than the average person. More risk-taking, more novelty-seeking, more active, often also more humor. You recognize this type of people when you see them. More creative also often. But it has bad sides. They get more divorce, just so you don't feel bad. They have more divorce. They often gamble away their fortune. They start one company, make a lot of money, then they make the nest, and it's all gone with the next company. So it's not saying they're the happier people, okay? They have there's some pleasure for everyone. You don't have to be an entrepreneur to have a fun life. This one, the R. Let me tell you about an experiment. They had people invited to the lab and said, "Do you like sports?" "Yep." "Okay." Then imagine you're playing a game of cyberball. So it's a little bit, imagine you're laying in the brain scanner. They give you a joystick and they let you play a game of cyberball. And you have 2 other people playing with you. You see it on the screen. You're laying there, you're playing with the joystick. It's like a computer game. And you have 2 other people playing with you. And you're telling you, these are 2 other people and you're playing with them. In the beginning, you're playing together. They toss the ball, you toss the ball together. It's all fun. Suddenly, these 2 other guys start playing with each other. And you're kind of like jumping, okay? You're trying to catch, but you're always a little bit too late. And they're always tossing to each other, and you're kind of feeling left out. That's a scenario of social exclusion that was shown or simulated in the brain scanner. And what they found is a brain activity that was the same as when your arm gets cut off. So social exclusion is processed by the brain in a similar way as physical pain. As I said before, we used to be in these small societies of maybe 50 people, and when you were out of this group, you were dead. And that's why we are very, very sensitive to social exclusion. So this factor is called relatedness. It's about our deep desire to build strong relationships to other people. That's why on the Maslow pyramid I said social needs should be at the very bottom. Imagine everybody, well, not yesterday because you were all here, but in the department, the area where you work, everybody had a barbecue party yesterday evening, and you only found out this morning in the office because everybody talked about the sausages and how great the football match was. Oops, you were the only one not invited. That hurt, right? That's the kind of, who is CC on the email? Who do you invite to your team? Who do you talk to? It doesn't mean you have to talk to everybody and exclude it, but be a little bit sensitive to whether you maybe exclude some people. By the way, just very, a little bit of brain trivia, it has been shown that social exclusion is processed in the brain like physical pain. So if you take a Tylenol, anti-pain medication, it also goes away. So since our brain does not really distinguish so much between social pain and physical pain, you can take pain medication and you will feel better also emotionally. That's not what I advise here, but it's interesting how much our body and our mind are connected, really. I give you one final factor and then we are done. Okay, that's all I have to say today. This one, not you. You messed up my first exercise. I'm not going to, I'm going to find who looks like these two. They look like they really are going to be a good victim here. What's your name? Ulrich. Ulrich, I give you €100 now, okay? Imagine you have to share it with, what's your name?
Luisa.
Luisa. Mm-hmm. If she accepts your offer, you can propose, you can say, not propose, sorry, you can offer her money. You can say, you get amount X, and if she refuses your offer, I get all the money back. If she accepts your offer, you get both to keep the money. So here's the €100, what do you offer to Luisa?
She knows that I got €100?
Yes, and she knows how this entire game works. And we will play it again.
Then I give her 50, of course.
You give her 50, of course. Do you accept that?
Yes.
Are you both happy?
Yes.
Okay. Do you do that with your bonus? Would she get 50%? I have
to think about it.
I mean, it's interesting. Why didn't you give her €1? I mean, this would have been a much better deal.
She would have refused it. And
why would she refuse free money, Luisa? Would you refuse €1 if I give you a gift of €1 for free? She doesn't even have to work. She can just sit there, do nothing, and get €1.
She has a very strong feeling about fairness.
Oh, you have anticipated the F. Yes, but it's going against all the economic theories. If you look, maybe some of you have studied business administration at the university. All the books say people want to maximize profit. We are all about getting the most bucks out of every situation. People are egoistic and we want to get the best. That's not how it's written in the book, but that's the basic assumption that's behind many of these economic theories. It's not true. We are homo reciprocans, okay? We are homo relationalis. Okay, you can put it in many different words, but we are not the egoistic people who try to maximize their own well-being and profit. We survive best, and also those societies do best where people share with each other in a fair way. People will even pay money to punish. Let's say you had an exchange and he always offered you greedy, bad parts, only this €1. Later on, if he's in the, for example, they have a research setup where she can later give electroshocks to him, and she would do that. Or she could pay money so he gets some kind of suffering. People are like to give back. When somebody's unfair, we remember it forever. So very often, and I leave you with this little thought, when people fight about money in companies, and the bonus was too little, and he got more than I did, and these things, it's not about, oh, I don't know how to pay my rent, and now what will I give my children to eat tonight? It's about fairness. It's either about status, like am I not important enough to get more money here? Or it's about fairness. People prefer to get 50,000 euro a year in a company where everybody gets 10,000, over 250,000 in a company where everybody gets 500,000. We want to get more than the others, or a fair deal, and then we're happy. So these are the 5 factors of SCARF. How can you use them? First of all, it will change, hopefully, the way you think about other people. You will recognize these behaviors and these factors in the people around you. When you have a conflict with somebody, you can, and it can even be your partner at home, it can be a colleague, it can be anybody, it can be your client. Go through those and check whether it might be one of these things, the underlying problem. You can also use these in a change process or when you create a work environment to go through those systematically and think, how can I create an environment where people experience these 5 things? And then they will probably work much better, perform better, and be happier at work. So that's it. I think I better stop now. I said what I wanted to say. If you have questions, and if we still have time, I think Pascal is approaching.
Yes, of course. We have time for 2 questions, 2 to 3 questions, short questions. But first of all, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very, very full and great speech and presentation. So 2 to 3 very quick, short questions, because maybe you say, yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. The SCARF model, all these things are on the same level, or is one more important than another one?
I think it depends on the individual. I would say not in general one of these factors is more important than the other, but people seek different things. People are sensitive to different things. For example, autonomy. Somebody who is, as we had the question before, an entrepreneur will be very high on dopamine and maybe even testosterone. These people need more autonomy. Some people are just happy if they can follow the rules and sit in, we are different. So some people really crave a lot of relatedness. Some people have high oxytocin levels in their brain, so they need a lot of, for them, good relationships are more important than for other people. It depends on the neurotransmitters in our brain. We have different substances and hormones and neurotransmitters. I missed this entire group during my talk. I never talked to you. Anyhow, now I do. You have testosterone, you have oxytocin, you have serotonin, you have dopamine, and many other things, serotonin. And how active these systems are in your brain will determine how important these 5 factors of SCARF are to you. So once you have understood SCARF, the next step would be to understand individual differences and then bring them together and understand who needs what of SCARF most of all.
Friederike, we have another question over here.
So one question to the negative bias. Is it possible to change the negative bias ratio, or is it given and every person has his own bias, but you can't change it?
You can change it. You cannot eliminate it completely. Okay, there will always be this bias. But for example, mindfulness training, there's this mindfulness-based stress reduction program. It's an 8-week program. It was developed by a Harvard professor, Jan Kabat-Zinn. You go through an 8-week meditation process where you learn to be fully present in the here and now. And afterwards, people are more objective. So when they, for example, have situations like the fairness game, they act more rationally. Or when they perceive an outside situation, they will see it more as what it is. So you can change it, or another important thing is also that there are high individual differences, but they are to some degree reversible. For example, depressed people obviously don't have 9 to 1. They might have whatever it is. I don't have numbers here, but it's obvious that they have a very strong negativity bias. And somebody who's highly optimistic and, a little bit Pollyanna type of person will maybe have a 5 to 1 bias and see things a lot more positively. So But it can be changed with mindfulness training and psychotherapy. But there's also a strong genetic component because it has to do also with your dopamine levels in the brain.
Okay, we have one last question over here.
May you answering me the question how change processes work differently for leaders and employees? So I learned that there's a difference when I'm a leader in a change process and when I'm employee.
I think it depends on the fact whether you feel in charge or not. As I said, autonomy is very important. Very often you see that leaders have high testosterone levels, so for dominance, and also very low cortisol levels. So people who, as a leader, are driving a change process, they feel in charge. They also very often know what's out there, because if they do a great change process, they get a high bonus, and everybody will say, good job. Whereas for the person who's on the passive end, cortisol levels go up. Mostly, unless you're a very good leader who manages to put people rather than being the victim in an ownership situation. But this requires a lot of trust, good communication, you know. Am I answering your question? Yeah, okay.
So
there you are.
I'm back. Yes, sometimes I'm. No, thank you very, very much again for being with us and for these insights and your presentation and your speech. A big applause again, please.
Thank you.